Like, how do you find an idea? How do you find a good startup idea? Or how do people land kind of where they are when you talk to interesting people? I think a lot of it is you stumble into it. I think most of the time it's not a kind of strategic process or something. It's like, yeah, I worked in painting and then I bumped into this problem and I knew enough players in the industry and had enough friendlies, like people who can really trust you because of who you are, not like what you have already built, to give you a shot and kind of be the first couple design partners to bootstrap a product. I think you kind of need that to get something rolling, to get the flywheel going. And I think the best way to make that happen is to just become an expert and with some weird niche.
Welcome back, Pursuit of Purpose listeners. I'm super stoked for today's conversation with Michael Bianco, who is a tech founder who recently sold his company to Stripe, which we'll probably talk about a little bit today. But I will let Michael explain, who he is a little further. But first of all, Mike, super excited that we got to connect through some mutual friends and excited for the conversation today. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, Chris, thanks for having me. This is fun. Yeah, great to connect and meet someone else who's into startups and software and all that.
Technology and nerdy things that
Exactly.
No, it's not like nerdy things used to be weird, but now it's like the cool thing, or at least
now
maybe
it's almost
maybe
cool.
I'm just no. It's just like as you get older, you're just like, yeah, we're cool, right? We're cool, right? Yeah, I think
that's what I
thought.
tell myself to try to make myself feel better.
That's right. So yeah, give us a 60-second bio of Michael Bianco and maybe the the recent couple years and what you've been doing and what you're up to now.
Yeah. My quick story. I've been doing software since I was small. I think I started doing freelance stuff when I was 13, and did it all through college to pay the bills. I built little kind of shareware tools back in the day where you kind of sell things for $10 and people would buy them and buy a license key, and went to school for economics and math. Didn't think I was going to do software. I thought I had to get a real job, and then I found out that actually software was like the best job you can get, and so I just kept doing it. Worked at a small kind of random publishing company where I learned really how to do real software engineering, how to manage teams, how to build SaaS, SaaS products, and do a lot with accounting and kind of e-commerce and all of that. And what that evolved into is doing consulting after reading the 4-Hour Workweek and wanting to oh man, Tim Ferriss says it's so easy. All you need to do is find this little muse and sell rubber spatulas online. I can totally sell software. This is going to be fun. After 4 or 5 really dumb ideas, as I was kind of consulting to pay the bills and trying out these dumb ideas on the side, I stumbled into this Stripe to NetSuite problem where Stripe was small-ish at the time, and it was growing. It was 500,000 people, something like that. NetSuite was big, but not as big as it is now. And NetSuite's kind of a QuickBooks for big businesses kind of thing, and accounting, boring accounting software that I got good at while I was at that publishing company. And there's no connector between the two. And so I kind of ran into this problem and built a connector for it. It kept growing, and I was lucky enough to sell to Stripe. They kind of came knocking 2 years after I started and wanted to acquire the company. So sold it to them and then worked for them for a couple of years, kind of leading some teams there, still building products, doing some product work, all that kind of thing. And then just recently left to kind of hunt for the new idea. I have no idea what I'm going to do yet, but me and my co-founder are kind of searching around and trying to uncover interesting problems and maybe more boring spaces of the economy that haven't been touched too much.
That's super. I love that. And I think the one thing that I would love to hear your perspective more on is just how, first of all, it's I feel like there's a couple different topics. I've got paying attention to where you are and wherever you're working, just kind of being aware of what are people complaining about, what knowledge do I have, and then how can I apply this knowledge to specific pain points. I think that I guess this is just from my own experience. Ever since I was I don't know, in high school or college, I remember saying I want to have a software company. I just want to make a software company. And it was just I want to make software. But I didn't know, what do I make? I don't know. So I tried, I I first knew I just wanted to start a business, and I knew video production. So I, started a video production company, which was basically Chris likes technology. Drones were kind of new. So I bought a drone and I didn't want to be an engineer. So I just was like selling drone photographs, aerial images to like real estate people.
Love it.
And that just grew into a media production company. But then I was like this entrepreneur, like I'm gonna figure this out, We were making like nothing, so it's all like early to mid 20-year-olds at my media company that was ended up being like small business marketing. But then it was like we're working 60, 80 hours a week, probably all making like $35,000 a year, having a blast, getting tons of experience. But then it's like, oh, my wife and I would like to have kids, and
Right.
this isn't going to work. So then I was like, I have to give up. I was a stay-at-home dad for a short while, and then went into get a real job, and I started working for a painting company, just as their marketing director. Like I'm gonna be a marketing director because I had run a marketing company for 6 years. Very, I learned so much business skills and just like management and hiring and
Totally.
firing people and all that stuff, even though I didn't make any money, but the value of the knowledge and the skill was great. And then it was from being at this painting company that you're just like, whoa, there's some serious, like talking to other painting companies and networking is like, whoa, there's like there's things that I'm seeing that are problems for everybody in the painting world. And now I have this consulting company / software, a review software that's targeted towards painting and now kind of home service. And that's a straight software. And then there's another consulting side for like automation that I'm doing. So that's just to
Cool.
give context because we're meeting each other. That's my frame is like, okay, there, like how many other people that were in painting maybe could have seen or been aware of some of these problems that I saw, but they didn't like act on it or say like, hey, let's try and make this bigger or solve more
Right.
problems or go deeper into the problem and see what else is there. And I feel like, I don't know if that relates to you at all, but that I think that's kind of something that I'll tell people, like, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I do automation for painting companies. And they're like, what? Like, how in the
How'd you
world
run
did
into
you end
that?
up? It's like, I didn't go seeking it. You're just in it and you're very
Yeah.
aware and you start speaking the language and realize, wait, how many painting companies are there? Oh, there's like hundreds. Okay. And, so anyways, that's my story. And I'll just I don't have a question, but what are your comments or how does that reflect in your journey?
Yeah, no, I mean, when you're like, how do you find an idea? How do you find a good startup idea? Or how do people land kind of where they are when you talk to interesting people? I think a lot of it is you stumble into it. There's not, I think most of the time it's not a kind of strategic process or something. It's like, yeah, I worked in painting and then I bumped into this problem and I knew enough players in the industry and had enough friendlies, kind of like people who can really trust you because of who you are, not like what you have already built, to give you a shot and kind of be the first couple design partners to bootstrap a product. I think you kind of need that to get something rolling, to get the flywheel going. And I think the best way to make that happen is to just become an expert and with some weird niche. It's kind of similar to what I did, where that publishing company I worked for used NetSuite. It used a bunch of other tools, but NetSuite was one of them. I made a lot of blogs and stuff. I wrote a lot of blogs on how to deal with NetSuite because in that weird ecosystem, there's a massive professional services kind of a network, both like the ones that are like kind of owned and paid for by NetSuite, and then just the larger network that's associated with NetSuite that are just independent consultants. But there's not an incentive for them to blog about how to do stuff because that's how they get their business. It's also kind of boring and people don't want to do it. But a lot of people, developers at companies, need to integrate with NetSuite. So they would find my blog, and that's how I got consulting gigs from these blog posts. And then I understood the problems of the customers more, working as a consultant, helping these guys out. And then the way I ran into the Stripe to NetSuite problem was actually doing a project with Stripe. They wanted me to, as a consultant, to explore what it would look like to build a Stripe to NetSuite integration. They decided not to move forward with it, but that's how I really like honed in on the idea. Was essentially a bunch of consulting, working inside an industry, understanding the problem better than anyone else, And I think if people look around, everyone's like a master at something, is a genius at something. And if they look around, they're going to realize, man, like I really know this better than anyone else in the world. And if I can just get the flywheel going, getting the first chunk of revenue to make it make sense for me to leave my job, they could build something awesome. You know, even if it's not a huge venture capital backed business, but a nice little lifestyle plus where it does way better than a job. It's way more fun, and you get to use your skills.
I think I 100% agree. I think that it's one other thing that in just talking to people, because I get so excited about this topic, is first of all, like it's noticing something, but now, and I wouldn't have said this 5 years ago, but it's like you have to also kind of do the math on like I have friends that are interested in entrepreneurship or they've got ideas, but there's a difference in like, hey, I have an idea and I'm going to go, the way I view it is like, you're going to like white knuckle your way into like, I have this passion for this thing and I'm going to build it and then people are going to come to me, as opposed to what you're saying, which is like, who do you know in your space that right now, if you said, hey, I could solve this, would you pay for this?
Yeah.
Would be like, no brainer, sign me up right now.
Yeah.
Because like that for me was like, again, we had like in this review software that I built, I made it originally for a dentist, an oral surgeon who wanted more reviews because, in my opinion, dentists are it's like their name's on the sign of the business,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and
Right.
they want to be like, we all have egos, but for dentists, it's just a little more personal than a regular business. And he wanted to beat all the competition. And this was like 8 years ago. And so we made this like very simple, like auto emailer thing that would email their past patients. And then it was like, we started going to trade shows and trying to get this off the ground. But this is where I would say there's a difference in that I was kind of forcing that, like, because one dentist said they wanted it, and I did get other dentists to sign up, but it never really like took off. And I've got a
Yeah.
bunch of theories on why now, but I had this. It was a fully functioning working software that was kind of just bringing in $1,000 a month or something, and I was like, this isn't gonna. It's nice. Like I have some like free tech money to buy
Right.
tech that I don't need, but I'm interested in. And then I took this marketing job and I was like, hey, I could take this review software, plug it into the business that I'm in right now. And then that software, because I'm the marketing director making the decisions on what we're going to spend money on, that painting company became the number one painting company in the country based on Google reviews, which was like this amazing case study.
Wow.
And now it's like all their painting company friends are like, hey, what are you guys doing for that? How'd you guys do that?
Right.
And it's
Right.
like, then the snowball starts going. So I feel like, anyways, that again, I'm thinking back to this idea of like paying attention, but also like, is this organically? At least my opinion now would be you have to find something that's an organic growth at the
Yeah.
beginning, because you need the cash coming in to be able to make more advancements and things. And I was literally trying to force my way into the dental industry. I did have a client, but it wasn't like a rock star. It was just like it worked and it was fine. But anyways, I feel like finding that niche is critical, and then also having the organic nature to get it off the ground.
Yeah, another way I describe the organic piece that you're talking about is, we've all heard like product market fit. Some of us probably heard like founder market fit. But for me, at least, this was kind of a new concept. It's like go to market fit. Like you might have a good product that people actually like when you talk to them and show them the product they want and they will buy. And like you could convince another dentist to use it for sure. But you had one that loved it and it was great. And maybe you're excited about working with dentists or the challenge of building a business. But then there's the go to market fit where like, is it actually easy to convince someone to buy this? Because they might actually want to buy it if you get in front of them in the right way. But is it a scalable, easy-ish kind of flow to actually get in front of people, which I think is easy to miss because it's more fun to focus on the building. It's less fun to focus on like talking to the people and making sure they actually want it. And then it's even less fun to make sure that the sales motion actually works. And I think you kind of have to have that whole stack for the business to really operate and run. And like you're saying, the product, the review thing, dentists probably would want it, but it's a lot easier to sell to painters. And I think that that's like the interesting sort of like, you had the core of the product, but you had to shift the vertical that you were targeting to get to really get the flywheel going.
So this is interesting. I'm just seeing parallels between, this is my assumptions on what your SweetSync tool was, but the biggest reason, or two main reasons that the original launch of this review software failed, in my opinion. One, I priced it at $20 a month, which is just like, I was thinking, like, looking back, I'd go to these trade shows where dentists, they're bringing their whole team there. I didn't know I didn't do the math on like how much a dentist's time is worth, but it's like,
Right.
it would have been like better for them to pay me a year subscription of like $240 for the year and just hand me a check and keep walking than what I was charging, if that makes sense. Like, it was literally a waste of their time to even find out what I was doing because I undervalued that. The second thing is that it was not automated at all. So it required a behavior change in the staff, which was something that now I would say, if you have a software, does your software make the team that's going to deploy this, does their job get easier using your software? Because for me, I was selling this tool that was underpriced to begin with. If it was higher priced, maybe I could have had some more traction and taken off. But you had to buy it, and then you had to convince your staff to do another thing in their job, which they didn't have to do previously. And they were doing this extra thing just for the review software. In the painting world, I was like thinking, okay, what did I learn from what didn't work in dentists? And then I was like, why don't we just tap directly into the project management software? The moment the project's done, ping it over to the Boolean software, and then Boolean takes and runs the information from there. And now all of a sudden you have this pain point of every business that knows that they need more Google reviews. And this thing, literally, you never have to talk about it again. Like, forget about talking about it in meetings. Nobody's responsible. You turn it on and it's automatic, and it's like done. And that's, I feel like, again, I'm assuming you're coming in with this SweetSync connector, and it's like, so tell me how you currently get your Stripe transactions into NetSuite. And it's like, oh gosh, all these things have to happen. It's like, well, if you paid for this tool and it just did that automatically, would that be worth it? And it's like, how much time is that saving you? Done. A no brainer. I'm assuming that's kind of that's what the tool did, right?
Yeah, it did a couple things. It did that, like it did the Stripe transaction thing. It like just brought the Stripe transaction to NetSuite. It would kind of plug into NetSuite's revenue recognition engine if you did subscriptions, so it would break up the revenue over time. It like charge your customers' cards automatically. Like you could send links to customers to pay off invoices. So it was a little bit of reporting and a little bit of collections.
But all automation, basically. Just streamlining things that people would have been doing manually.
Yeah, all really boring accounting automation type of stuff. But the interesting thing, so there was like the sales friction was there. Like, some people would take 6 months, a year to close and implement. It would take a long time to get these people closed. And I think it feels like there's two ways to kind of tackle things, right? Like if you're, you could build, like the thing that was really nice about the SweetSync product is it had zero churn. And the reason is once you close someone, once they implemented, once that part of their job disappeared, they didn't need to do anything. They weren't going to change it, even if it was expensive, even if the price went up, they just weren't going to change it as long as it reliably worked. But the catch is you had to get them to change a process. They were used to doing it like X, and they had to do it like Y. There was a behavior change that resulted in way less work, especially as the company scaled. But you had to go through that process with them, which required, talking to the accountants, talking to the controllers, talking to the tech teams. There's all these people you had to talk to. Like a cutoff date, you had to do this switch over. It was all of this work to onboard the user. But once they were on, it was super valuable to them and required very, very little kind of ongoing maintenance or support. And I think there's different models there, right? It sounds like your product is more plug and play, no behavior change. It can get going really quick, really easy for people to get going with it. But you could charge thousands of dollars a month for my software. People would pay it because it was one of those sorts of tools, and the overhead was high enough that people would pay that amount of money for, that type of automation. So it's like, I
Totally.
think there's different angles and ways to attack. Um,
I'm reading a book right now called the SaaS Playbook. Have you heard of that?
I've heard it. I haven't read it.
Rob Walling, I think is his name, the author. But what you're saying is reminding me of one of his like core principles is the moat around your business. And
Yeah.
one of the things that he talks about is like the downside of my software is it's plug and play, but that also like most likely, and it's true in my case, it's very easy if someone finds a cheaper widget or another thing that comes along that maybe
Yep.
is does something slightly different. They just turn this off, turn the other thing on, and there's no friction in that change,
Yep.
no stickiness, right? In your situation, the beauty and the frustrating part about selling it was probably also the thing that made it super special, which is I've got to get I heard you rattle off at least 3, maybe 4 employees and like core people that are all busy and doing tons of things to all be synced up and on the same page to say, yes, let's make the switch. And it's like another software would have to be like 100 times more valuable to justify
Yeah.
going from a very automated to like what else are you getting by leaving Sweet
You
Sync,
wouldn't,
right? Yeah.
I mean, the other unique thing about like, it was never going to be a massive 100 million ARR business. It just wasn't that sort of market. So I think the one thing that's kind of interesting in the SaaS market nowadays is like, if you look below the waterline of like, 10 million ARR businesses, there's a ton of stuff to be developed, a ton of little gaps between enterprise systems. Like there's a ton of things that just don't exist that should, mainly because you need some like unreasonable person to go build the initial version, go through the sales process, be interested enough, have the weird combination of skills to do it. And so if you build it, there's basically zero competition in a lot of
Mm.
these kind of enterprisey tools. So that was the other dynamic is like the competitors were like, are you going to pay an outsourced accountant like a linear amount of time as your company grows to continue running these processes? That's one option. And that was like the competitor. So you kind of had like, you didn't have any software that they were going to switch to unless they went out of business or stopped using Stripe or NetSuite. And I think
Mm.
there's a lot of businesses out there that are shaped like this, that one could just go build. It's not like, and you could even, one of the magic aspects of that business was just building partnerships with the sales orgs at both of those companies. I had basically zero marketing, zero outbound. I just handled inbound sales. And I just enabled those other sales teams to close their deals faster. And I think there's a lot of businesses out there like that where these sales reps at larger companies have problems that they need to solve to close more deals, get more revenue, get more commission. I mean, that's their whole job. And if you can help them do that, they're going to help you. If
Oh, so you're
naturally.
saying you were going to the Stripe sales team or the NetSuite sales team and saying, "Hey, my thing can help solve this problem." So when you're in the pitch and they're like, "Oh, what are we going to do about syncing our credit card transactions?" Like, "Oh, well, there's actually this tool." That's what you're saying?
So I wish I did that. I should have done that. What they actually came to me and they said, "Hey, we're trying to close a deal that involves syncing these transactions. Can you help us?" And then after
Mm.
whacking over the head enough times, I realized, man, I should just make it. My sales process should be just helping these sales orgs with this problem, and I should provide sales enablement. I should provide more tools to them to make it easier for them to do this. But it really took like them coming to me
But
to
that's
realize,
ultimately how it ended. You didn't seek it out as to start, but that's what they did.
yeah, and it works
Love
incredibly
that.
well. And I think there's a lot of places, like a lot of little gaps between systems or like glue-like software, like little verticalized SaaS plays where there's like, you have this stack of systems that doesn't play well and it wastes a lot of time. And if you can just, weave it together really well and speak to that user's particular pain in a very exact way,
Mm.
you can build a nice business off of it.
Totally. Love that. Yeah, that's super interesting. I think that's actually the other like so the review software, my wife is actually the one that's like running that and she's doing the sales and stuff for
Nice.
that. What I'm doing full time now is automation consulting for painting companies. So the review software, many people that even listen to this podcast are clients of the review software. And then a few, I've only worked with 8 companies so far, but it's like these are big automation packages that like eliminates like 140 hours of manual work for someone in the business every month.
So
And
what
it's
kind of
like,
stuff are you doing?
so it's similar to what you're saying, where it's like you have a typical painting company. This is my experience, has between 6 and 10 software apps that they're using to just run the business. And this is things like QuickBooks, Google or
Right.
Gmail, Calendar. There's a niche estimating tool called Paint Scout. Company Cam, like, is a photo management for project organization and photos. What else? Their project management tool, their CRM system. So there's all these things that they're using right now, and none of them talk to each other. It's like absolutely, like, this is what I encountered when I was at my previous job. I was just like blown away at how, like, this all started like I was at lunch at my old job. I'm like 2 months into my marketing director job, trying to focus on marketing stuff, and I'm literally just having a conversation with the receptionist, and she was like, "Oh gosh, it's Friday. I got to send out, the confirmation or the reminder emails to all of our bids next week." And I was like, "What? What do you like? Tell me, what are you talking about?" And she's like, "Oh, so every Friday I have to go to all the estimator calendars, and the estimators had like 16 estimates a week, and her job was to email every estimate. It's like, hey, just a reminder, your bid is next Tuesday with Nathan at 4 o'clock. Like, we'll see you then." And she was copying and pasting an email template and putting in like their time and the name of the estimator and stuff. And then
Whoa.
she was doing this multiplied by 4 estimators every Friday. And I was like, "How long does that take
Wow.
you?" And she's like, "Oh, it's all the whole afternoon." And I was like, "And you do this every week?" She was like, "Yeah." And the thing that was crazy to me is that there is like, this is just where you realize not everybody thinks like you do. But I was like, if I got to work and someone was like, "We need you to do the same task 35 or 50 times every Friday," and I would just be like, "Nope." That's not
Right,
happening,
right, right.
But people aren't thinking, and that was one issue. And then you, like, every department, I just started digging, like, "Oh my gosh, like, and what do you do about this?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's manual too. We have to copy that over." I'm like, "Okay." So then you start meeting other companies, and this was like, it's kind of like you, like, had I had my current train of thought like 3-4 years ago, this would have been like like a rocket ship out of the business to like go
Right.
build more. But at the same time, there's a trade-off, because in the job there was an opportunity to network with other marketing managers at other painting companies. And so I was building, like you said, the trust and just like the network, stumbling across all these problems. But I'm still like, it wasn't a business, it wasn't a thing,
Right.
but I loved it. I loved the automation, but I also knew marketing. And so I'm networking with other marketing managers and stuff, and we're all kind of talking. But anyways, that's just, and now the thing that is interesting about what you're saying though is, uh, right now we're using tools like Zapier and Make. I don't
Yeah.
know if you're familiar with either of those.
I know Zapier. I don't know Make.
Make is basically same exact concept, but they're kind of like the new guy. I think they actually used to be called Integramat. So I don't know how long Integramat was around, but Make, they rebranded to Make 3 years ago. But anyways, the same exact thing. They are the integrator between all these apps, and they're no code tools, but they're still
Yeah.
like, so you don't need to be a developer to use them, but there's still like a lot of knowledge and just like awareness and
You
structure
need
of
to be
how,
technical.
yeah, how do I want to connect things, and what stuff should I pass back and forth, that
Yeah.
is valuable. So I'm coming in and like consulting on these no code tools and giving roadmaps and templates of Zapier and Make templates that will work for painting businesses.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes actually doing the work. And then just like literally in the last 2 months, I'm turning all of this into a course so that people can do it
Nice.
themselves instead of me having to come in and implement with my team. Because it got so routine with every company that we were working with, that now I've got like workflows and charts and worksheets to like take your team through and stuff. So that's exciting, but it's still like, to the point that you're making, what softwares could be built where it's like literally connect the API from this tool to that tool, and then the software is doing everything else.
Yeah.
And right now we're like, you could say like the mock software that we're building for these companies is Zapier or Make. That's kind of the glue. But in your case, let's say Make had a Stripe NetSuite integration. Certainly there are far more features that could be built that are custom and more specialized or valuable if you're building a custom tool, as opposed to being limited by what triggers and actions has
Yeah.
Stripe and NetSuite decided to put into their Zapier integration. So,
And I think there's like a correctness like knob that you need to worry about too. Like for, I'm sure a lot of the stuff you're doing, there's like two variables that kind of change on each business. Like the correctness variable isn't 100%, right? If like one detail is missed once a month, if it's like a little email doesn't make it from here to there, if there's some missing dropped message every once in a while, probably okay, and each business is like slightly different, like the way they want something done. And so there's not like the variability isn't zero between each business. There's like, yeah, but we like the quote to come in like this, or we like to
yes.
say this. And there's this sort of customization where, because of the market they're in, because of how they want to run their business, they have a particular way of doing it. And I think those variables matter a lot when you're thinking about building standardized SaaS, where if you need to make sure, like for instance, the thing I was doing, it was enterprise software. So like it had to work. The books had to be closed. It supported public companies that need to close their financials. And so I couldn't say, hey, Zapier's thing doesn't have this feature or went down. Like, sorry guys, you just had to be able to like go in, debug the system, fix it, fix NetSuite bugs that would come up, all this sort of stuff. So like having entire control and standardization and like super high availability and monitoring and all that stuff mattered a lot. But the trade-off with that is like, hey, this is the way you got to structure your data. This is the way it's going to come in. You can pick, X number of options, but like that's it. And if you want to get outside of that box, good luck. And you can go hire a developer to do that. But here's our box. And so I feel like there's like some continuum where you have to choose. And each business structure is different, I would say. And like you also have to kind of do the calculus, like area under the curve. Like, is there enough people who have a common problem that you can really build a SaaS? Or is it sort of what you're doing, where it's templates? It's like kind of value plus consulting, where you're like, yes, you're doing consulting, but it's a lot of like using this like template stuff you've already developed. So you're not doing the work from zero each time, and you're kind of selling that.
Yes.
And so you kind of have to, you can't just go in and build, like each market is different, and you really have to your point, work in the industry, be the marketer, know the other, painting company marketers to know how to build the right thing for them. Because it's very different depending on which kind of industry vertical you're in.
I'm like super stoked about the way you're articulating this is 100% lining up with my experience. And I like the way you're describing this. Like you say the correctness.
Correct. So in like software engineering,
yeah.
That's like a thing where you like, how, like if you think of a pipeline or something and something
what
is going
percentage
through it,
of things are going to work? Yeah.
Yeah.
98% or 99% correctness versus in your case, I'm assuming it has to be 100%.
Right. But we're something, because it was accounting, it had to be right. Sales, like if you send a sales email and it's worded badly, like whatever, it's more about getting more kind of swings at bat as opposed to getting a home run each time.
Yeah.
And that kind of changes the type of systems, that correctness level that you develop, and the products that the types of products you build.
Because I was going to say that's one of the things that I realized. Another problem that exists in the painting world is there's tools. It's like the super interesting place where no code tools come into play. And that is they're no code. So theoretically, you just like, if you want to zap this thing and zing that over there and do whatever you want, it's very easy for anybody to do that. And it's just like, whoa, check out what I just did. Now emails are getting sent automatically. Great. But now do another automation and solve this problem. And now another one, and now another one. And now all of a sudden you've got a stack of automations that your business is running on. And the thing that I realized in working with these companies, the 8 companies that I've helped with, some companies were further down the automation path than others. So they had more like structure in place, but they were stuck. And the reason that they were stuck goes back to what you're describing, which is they never made a architect or like a blueprint of the structure of their data. So they never sat down with finance and sales and marketing and said, okay, what do we need to know when we're doing a project? Everything.
Right.
Put it all
Right.
on the table, and let's agree that we're going to call it project types, not type of project in this software and business unit in this software. It's like simple things where it's like it was just like people were trying to solve problems in their silo. But if you sit down and you plan the whole workflow first, then start automating, that changes the game drastically. And then this is literally like when I'm talking to a company, I don't even like saying that I'm selling, because I'm really just trying to figure out like, how do we get you from this terrible, painful place you are to where you're going, which
Right. Right.
is selling.
Which is what great sales is.
Yes.
You're
And
just, if
so
you can help them, you are. You know?
exactly. And if I can, it's like, hey, I mean, here's the trade-off. You can do this or you can do this. Like, if you want me to involve, here's the price that it's going to cost.
Right.
But in that process, being able to articulate, it's like you started building a house and you have walls up and you're like about to put the second story on, but you actually never made a foundation.
Yep.
So you now have to literally knock over your whole house, which, by the way, people are living in now and using, so that you can build a foundation, and then you can go back to building the second story.
Yeah.
And that's going to be painful. It's going to be hard. It's going to take months, and there's retraining involved. But like, there legitimately isn't any other way forward. So the question that the business has to think about and answer is like, are we okay with a house that has 4 walls and no foundation? And how long can we last? Or do we just want to like eat the frog and get it done and just move on? And that's like, for the businesses that haven't reached that point yet, it's also compelling because it's like, hey, let me tell you what happened over here, where they didn't take time to make a plan and make a blueprint of like, what do we need to know to run our business? And anyways, I just feel I'm 100% in agreement that that's the same thing, where there is like things that, in my opinion, I kind of have the optimal way to run a painting company. If I were to start a painting company, I'd be like, this is how we're doing it and this is why. But then you're talking to one company and they're like, oh no, we have to do job numbers like this. And it's like, okay, like, is there any particular reason? What's always all I've done it. Like, all right,
Yeah.
well, if you did it this way, just there's things where it doesn't mean it's like it can't be done the way that they're doing it, but they're just changing it is like something they don't want to take on. And so it'd be like, if they're going to use the SweetSync connector, you're like, you have to do it this way or don't use our product. And in my situation, it's like, you could do it your way. It might be better to do it this way, and here's why. But if you'd rather do it your way, we can just tweak these things and you'll give up this thing and we'll make it work,
Well, it's interesting because there's a bunch of different there's a bunch of different concepts here that you could dig into. Like, there's an interesting book called Soft War. It's like basically the Larry Ellison sort of biography. And Oracle started out as a database, and the idea was you could build these forms and views kind of on top of the database. And each company would do it differently, and best in breed, you buy the database and pay all this money to like get the kind of business operations, business processes, just how you wanted it. That exact order number, instead of O dash, you just want O. You want a number instead of the O, whatever. You have your particular way of doing it, best in breed, but now you end up with this maintenance burden where you can't upgrade. Someone else coming into the company has no idea how you did it. So there's not standardization across companies. So it's harder to find talent. It's harder to ramp up the talent once you find them. It's harder to make changes because you can't use other standardized software. But you get the benefit of, if there's one key thing that you need for your business that actually moves the needle, you can do it because you own the whole stack. And then there's sort of like the 80-20 thing, right? Where you're buying not best in breed, but full integration, pre-built, turn it on. This is the way it's done, but you can't do everything you want. And it's interesting because this was like, I don't even remember the timeline, but let's call it the 70s when Oracle Database started out. And then they kind of ping-ponged back and forth between best in breed, just general sort of like, does everything you want, but not as good as you'd like it to be done, but you get the other benefits. So you have that on the product side, but the interesting kind of mental model that's helpful from software engineering is it's actually not bad to just like do stuff at the beginning and just call it, project name or name a project. And then, but there's a point where you have to stop. And this is the idea of technical debt is and you can think of it as a credit card. Like it's fine to use a credit card as long as you pay it off at the end of the month. And with its software or any sort of like architecture based design and technology, you have to know when your payment's coming up on your credit card, when not refactoring, not like renaming everything, kind of slowing down, not adding new features, like better kind of implementing a better design now that you know more is going to actually speed you up in the future. And you got to pay down the debt. You got to, you know, stop for a month and fix it all before you can actually go faster. Otherwise you're going to just, you know, slow down to nothing. And this is why you look at these big companies that build a lot, they grow, everything's going great. And then the product is basically frozen in time for a decade. And that's because they run into this technical debt problem, among other things. But this is one of the reasons.
I love that. I haven't heard that term either. This is there's so many things that I feel like, yeah, we're gonna have to have like a dozen more conversations to go deep into all these topics. But I'm trying to keep track of time. I do have a couple wrap up questions for today's episode, anyways.
Yeah,
and
let's do it.
That is 3 books. So I ask everyone that comes on, give me 3 book recommendations. They do not have to be related to our topic that we're talking about, or they can be. But just what are 3 book recommendations that you got?
Yeah, I'd say the first one that is really, I really enjoyed is called Wanting by Luke Burgess. It's about, it's kind of a popularization of Rene Girard's philosophy about, I would call it like the physics of human interaction. That's not how he would talk about it, but that's how I kind of parse in my mind. I really like that one.
What's the author's name?
Luke Burgess.
Luke Burgess.
Yeah, Luke Burgess. Yeah, let me think. I mean, 0 to 1 is kind of a cliche, but I really enjoyed that book. It's another, yeah, I read that a couple years ago, but it still pops up in my mind. It's one of the good ones out there.
That's by Peter Thiel, right?
Yeah, Peter Thiel.
Yeah. Thiel.
Yeah, let me think. What's a third one? I really like, there's a book called Successful Fathers that is hard to get because it doesn't have an ebook and it's out of publish. They don't publish it anymore. But it's by this guy who ran a school, I think a couple different schools. He was a headmaster of these boarding schools. And it's basically like his, mostly anecdotal, but he didn't have kids himself and he ran these schools and he worked with hundreds of families.
What was the name of the book?
Successful Fathers. I think that's what it's called.
Okay.
And really interesting book. I mean, just I have kids and it was really useful for me.
James Stenson?
Yeah, this guy.
Interesting.
I really enjoyed reading it. So that's another one.
Sweet. And my last question is favorite movie.
Favorite movie. Yeah, I mean, cliche, but I'd have to say Braveheart. I love Braveheart.
Fantastic. It's excellent. That's like, I'll just tell you now. I was going to say we'll talk about it later, but I'm big on IMDb ratings. So
okay.
Like if someone makes a recommendation, I go look it up right away. Obviously Braveheart's fantastic, but I'll look up the rating. And if it's below a 7.3, I won't watch it. Because my friend and I, over the course of the last, we came up with this in college, and now I love telling people to try and disprove this. But the whole concept behind it is there's so many movies out there to watch. You just don't have enough time. And there's nothing worse than like starting a movie. I mean, like a really bad movie, you'll just stop watching, but now you wasted 30 minutes or whatever. But you get to the end, you're kind of like, wasn't like not really great. So the 7.3 is just like if there is a movie above a 7.3 in IMDb, whoever you are probably just statistically, you're going to be like, yeah, it was worth it. It was worth my time. I'm happy with that 2 hours that I spent.
Right.
But if it's below a 7.3, I give everybody in the world one mulligan. And you can say, hey, Chris, I know this is below a 7.3, but I'm going to use my mulligan. It's worth it. If I like it, you get your mulligan back and you can do another one. If I don't like it, you don't get your mulligan back and there's no, I don't take another sub 7.3 recommendation from you again. You can recommend all the above 7.3, but those are like confident. So it's the best part is trying to find movies that are sub 7.3 that are actually worth watching. And I've talked, depending on like your competitiveness, I'll tell people this and they're like, there's no way that works. And they're like, what about this movie? Like, I bet everyone hates this movie. It's like, nope, 7.3, like it's, or 7.4. But like finding those 7.1, 7.0, those ones are like, they're hard. It's really hard to come up with. So
So
anyways,
what's your below 7.3 movie?
there's one, and I think I used to say this all the time, but Red Violin is one that I
Red
believe
Violin.
is, I'm just double checking that it's actually a sub 7.3 now. I feel like I used to say this all the time and it's gotten
That's
more like,
7.6. That doesn't count.
so it's 7.6. Um, so, and then my other one that I like, it's, and honestly, like it's very hard. I very rarely have found one. I should create like the winners list of sub
Yeah,
7.3
yeah,
that are
you
worth it.
totally should. That would be
But
awesome.
the other one that I'm a big fan of is Law Abiding Citizen.
Okay,
And I
I haven't
can't
ever
remember.
heard
I
of it.
think that one's right on either 7.3 or 7, or so it's 7.4. But those two are um, I love finding the movies that are in right around that range because they're ones that you haven't heard of, but they're still good. The
Yeah,
one like Braveheart, not to take anything away from your recommendation, but Braveheart's like, if you haven't seen Braveheart, like you're crazy. Like,
right.
have you
I
been
know,
living
I
under a
know.
rock? So that's like an easy recommendation, but it's really fun to try and find the ones that they're like the little gems that no one's heard of, but they're fantastic movies. Because on Netflix, it's just like a whole bunch of crap that's just like not worth any. Like so many movies on Netflix are like five or sixes,
Terrible. Yeah.
and a lot of them are probably even lower than that. But anyways,
You know what I'll say
that's my
though.
movie
I think
thing.
that my favorite show that has not that I don't know that many people have actually watched it is called. Oh, now it's just slipped from my mind. What is it called? Turn. It's about like the like a
Washington
spy
Spies.
yeah, Washington Spy Network. What is that? Does that have a
That
rating?
one is an 8.1. So here's this is the
Okay,
cat.
there
There's
it is.
the next layer. I think, and I'm open to your refining this theory, but I believe that shows are actually adjusted by a whole point to 8.3. And my reason
Hmm.
is if you watch one episode of a show and you're like, not really in it, I don't feel qualified to give it a bad rating because I only watched one episode. But if you watch an entire season of a show, clearly you liked it, so you're going to give it a 9 or a 10, or you wouldn't have watched the whole thing. At least that's my working theory. So I haven't come up with like the bar, but across
Yeah.
the board, if you look like moderate good shows, they're all high sevens, eights. And then the popular ones are all nine, eight, 8.5, 9 across the board. So there definitely seems to be a discrepancy in like movies. And my only theory that I've come up with is that, again, like if you've only watched one or two episodes, you're not going to be like the first episode sucked and I'm rating the whole season bad. So
Right.
you're kind of, you got to get more invested, which just inherently skews the system. So I don't know. That's my
Yeah, I
best,
don't know. It would be interesting to understand like when does a person review something? Like what
especially a season
prompts,
like that.
especially, yeah, exactly. Like at what point in the season would they review it? Like, well, I only review an Amazon product if it's awesome or if it's like I
Terrible.
hated it.
Yeah.
So there's like, what causes someone to go on and be like, it's an eight?
Yeah.
Like especially for a show, like it's different than a movie. I'm not going to think to rate it.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
don't know. It's interesting.
But yeah, I would say I'm actually curious. There is way less. Like that one only has 23,000 ratings on IMDb. But either way, like this is a super interesting show that we're gonna. I'm adding it to my watch list on
This is great. It's
IMDb.
great. It's really great. My wife and I like burned through it during COVID.
And the only reason I would say that I feel like you can't have the 7.3, and I also haven't made a note of these ones, but there are a lot of shows that I've looked and they're like a 7.5, and I'm like, it wasn't that like. There's some shows that are just like I love them, they're fantastic, but it definitely is the 7.3 does not work for shows,
Yeah,
so you have to take into consideration that I believe, and again, it's like what's the safe cutoff that you could see a show's an 8.5 and be like, you're probably going to like it. Like if you're, and this is again, if you're like, I would consider myself from like an entertainment perspective, I'm just like looking for a good story, like some
right.
action, kind of
I'm not a
mind bender.
connoisseur. you know?
Yeah, I'm not like a film critic that's like, well, the director and the director of
Right.
photography actually used the wrong lens. I don't
I
care about all
respect
that.
people who have that kind of like
Yeah,
a kind of a mastery over the craft, but
100%. Yeah,
for me, I'm like, yeah, I got 30 minutes every once in a while. Want to do something fun, relaxing with my wife. I just want an entertaining story.
totally.
It's that simple.
Well, Michael, this was super awesome. Thank you so much.
This is great,
And
Chris. Thanks for
yeah,
chatting.
we'll probably be chatting again soon. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Love it. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for your attention and listening to this episode of The Pursuit of Purpose. Your feedback and comments mean the world to me. If you liked what you heard, please take a second, leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. If you've got suggestions for future episodes or just want to say hi, shoot me an email at chris@chriskiefer.com. Don't forget, I make it a point to include all the links to the books, movies, and resources mentioned on this episode in the show notes. You can see those directly below in the description or on my website, chriskiefer.com. Thanks so much, guys.